The stage is set for a thrilling match at Lakeside Lanes. Hello everyone and welcome to Manchester, New Hampshire. My name is Steve here in the virtual broadcast booth to call a match between Bryan Hebert and Chris Salmons today. 3-Ball Spare welcomes you to this virtual ACST match. We think you're going to love it. You're not going to want to miss this match. The match format in the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour is 5 strings with 14 points on offer, with 2 points per string and 4 for total pinfall. If there is a tie, the points are evenly split. Some housekeeping for you today. Candlepin Bowling is based out of New England in Canada. It's a bit different from 10-pin. Here's our away bowler, Bryan Hebert, with the opening ball, taking down 5. In Candlepin Bowling, we don't clear the deadwood around the pins, and there are 3 balls per frame if no strikes or spares are thrown. Bryan Hebert for the spare shot on the pocket, takes 3 of 5. Candlepin Bowling is a bit more difficult than 10-pin, a bit more entropy, much smaller targets. There's no oil patterns in Candlepin Bowling. The average spread among ACST bowlers is presently 82 and 128 at the extreme ends. That's Bryan Hebert, our away bowler today, who will open up with a 9-box. Subtitles and live captions are available should you need or prefer them. YouTube should have a transcript feature handy as well. Here's Bryan Hebert on the pocket again. But for the first ball this time, drops 8. It's the 4 and the 8. He's going for a spare and goes a little bit down the center, kicks a piece of wood. So I'm going to call the match for you today in audio form, and the scoreboard on your screen will be updated to reflect the scores. My scoreboard is unofficial. The bowlers make the final calls on scores. If there's any conflicts, I'll go with what they have, unless they ask me for another set of eyes. And I might sometimes verify scores if things seem out of sync. I appreciate your patience if that happens. In this match, though, this is a little bit different than my normal setup. This is actually a match that I wasn't present for, but Bryan Hebert had requested that I overlay all the scores and do the narration and the commentary and all that, so we worked with what we got. Bryan Hebert brought a camcorder. That's why the camcorder, the camera positioning is a little bit different, and the pin cam is a little bit less crisp than it normally is, but hey, it works. It's we'll call it good enough for bowling work. That's a 9-box for Bryan Hebert. That's 27 after 3. If you like this content, I encourage you to consider subscribing to 3-Ball Spare on YouTube if you want to see more content just like this. And this match was played a little bit in the past. I would have preferred to get this out sooner, but I just didn't really have time to kind of get this put together in the post-production, so my apologies on that. But I do have data for you about the 2 bowlers at the time of the broadcast, so we could try to make it seem as live as possible without being live. So this is Bryan Hebert, our away bowler, who bowls out of Class E North Division 3 in Boutwell's Bowling Center. He has a season record at the time of this match of 38 and 88 with 9 matches played. This is match number 10 for Bryan Hebert. His away record is 14 and 56, home record 24 and 32. Season average 89.3, home average 89.0. Excuse me, away average 89.0, home average 89.9. Excuse me on that. High single 108, high series 474, 9 strikes, 44 spares, and 67 10-boxes. Here's Bryan Hebert, and he'll thread the needle on the 9-drop attempt. Bryan Hebert has a 30% perfect box percentage with 4,022 seasonal pinfall, 4th in his division, 10th in the wildcard seed at the time of this broadcast. There's a 10-box for Bryan Hebert. And the bowlers will bowl 5 boxes at a time before they rotate. Bryan Hebert threw 4 9s and a 10 for 46 through 5. He's got 2 for 5 on the head pin, 40%, with a 5.6 first ball average. We're moving right along here to Christopher Salmons, who bowls out of Lakeside Lanes. He's the home bowler today, a mid-season substitute bowler. And he'll drop 6, missing the head pin to the right. He's got the 1-2-4-7 left side 4 horsemen. Chris Salmons, he's 110 and 58 for the season with 12 matches played. This is his 13th match, and he'll miss the spare shot. Chris Salmons has an away record of 46 and 38, a home record of 64 and 20, a season average of 98.7, away average 100, home average 97.8. Chris Salmons has a high single of 120, high series 536, and he'll take a 9-box to start out his match. Chris Salmons has 20 strikes, 67 spares, and 76 tens for the season with a perfect box percentage of 40%. 4,445 seasonal pinfall so far, and he is a division leader in Class E North Division 1 and third overall in the class seedings. Salmons drops 6. And he's on the pocket and only takes 2. For the third ball, he'll take a nice 10 box. That's 19 through 2 for Mr. Chris Salmons. We're at Lakeside Lanes today in Manchester, New Hampshire off of Candia Road. On lanes 3 and 4. Chris Salmons will take 3 off the back right corner of the 6, 9, 10. The spare ball, just to the left of the head pin, leaves the 1, 3, 8. And he'll make it a 9 box, leaving the 8 pin. That puts Chris Salmons at 28 through 3. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. This virtual match with virtual scoring and virtual commentary. First time I'm kind of doing it in this format. It was at Bryan Hebert's request, so it's been a fun time. Bit of a slightly different setup, as you can tell. Still kind of familiar. I was able to import most of the same things from the mobile streaming kit when we're out in the field. The only thing different is just really the camera work, as it was just one camera. There's a 9 box for Chris Salmons, 3 9s and a 10 for 37 through 4. At the same point in the match, Bryan Hebert was at 36 through 4 with 4 9s. Salmons in the back right corner again, 3 go down. This is yet another installment in the Bryan Hebert versus Chris Salmons chronology. I've covered at least 2 other matches between them over the years. You can find those matches either on Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube or 3-Ball Spare, depending on what year it was or which match it was. And that's Chris Salmons with a 7 box. 5 boxes in, he's at 44 through 5, and Bryan Hebert is at 46 through 5. That is your score update. 5 boxes through. As we move on to quarter 3 of game 1 here on the ACST, Bryan Hebert will be on lane 3. And Bryan's camera kind of cuts off the bowler on lane 3 if they're far back, so just bear with me on that. But Bryan Hebert will drop 1 on lane 3 on the 7 pin. And he's on the pocket, almost spares up that 1 drop. A nice impressive second ball. He leaves the 10 pin with 2 planks of wood, and, well, they were in front of it. They're now starting to roll away. For the 10, Bryan will nudge a piece of wood, and oddly enough, it won't go for the 10. So it'll be a 9 box for 55 after 6. Here's Bryan, he fires, and he takes 2 down. The 6 and the 10 on the first ball. For the spare shot, goes where the first ball went. Bryan Hebert in his past 5 matches has taken 18 points, averaging 3.6 points per match as at the time of this match. In his past 5 matches, he took 2502 pins out of his 4,022 seasonal total pinfall take-home. And Bryan Hebert will unfortunately take a 3 box. That will be 58 after 7. Hebert to the left back corner pocket. 4-7-8 taken out. Follow-up ball. Where the first ball went. Consistent, just not exactly in the best way. Third ball on the pocket. Makes the best of it. That's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. That puts him at 66 through 8. As he closes in on the first game. And Bryan Hebert will take 3 off the back right corner again. 6, 9, 10 taken out. Bryan Hebert averaging 4.11 on the first ball. Second ball over correction to the left corner. Center diamond in the 8. To clean up, he'll leave the 1 and the 3 for an 8 box. In the 9th for 74. Bryan Hebert's gone 2 for 9 on the head pin this game with no splits. Chris Salmons yet to find the head pin so far. Bryan Hebert and Chris Salmons last faced each other at Riverwalk Lanes in Amesbury, Massachusetts. They've also battled at Academy Lanes in Haverhill, Massachusetts before that. And that is a 4, 6, 7, 10 split for Bryan Hebert on the pocket with a split. 2 left, 2 right. And he'll hit the wood in the center. He'll take the right 2 and nothing off the left 2 because the left sidewall of the ball just jumped up high. And he'll make it a 9 box, and that's going to be an 83 first game for Bryan Hebert. Bunch of 9s, couple of 8s, a 10 box, and a 3 for 83 in the first for Bryan Hebert. It's now time for Chris Salmons, 44 through 5, to continue onward. You're watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour on 3 ball spare. Chris into the right gutter. Chris Salmons and Bryan Hebert, they're always they're friendly rivals with one another. You may hear some occasional commentary between the two. It's all really funny to listen to. Chris Salmons drops 6 on the second ball. And there's a 9 for Chris Salmons to open up the second half for 53 through 6. Chris Salmons in his past 5 matches at the time of this recording, he took 50 points, averaging 10 points per match. And in his past 5 matches, he's taken 22 pins out of his 4,445 seasonal pinfall take-home as he drops 9 and leaves the 6 for a spare opportunity coming up here. Chris Salmons' longest streak of strings, where he's totaled more than 100, has been 3 in a row. And he plays the wood, and everything dances around the 6, the ball included. But none of that amounts to a spare for Chris Salmons, whose longest streak of matches, where he's totaled more than 500 in grand total pinfall, has been 3 consecutive this season. Longest winning streak of more than 7 points has been 7 consecutive this season so far, and he'll take a 9 box for 62 through 8. Excuse me, 62 through 7, correction. She's clearing the gutter there. We're at Lakeside Lanes off of exit 1 on 101 in Manchester, New Hampshire. Exit 101, if you keep going up exit 101 to about exit 9 or so, you'll end up at Exeter Bowling Lanes, Shooter Sports Pub. And you can also get to Portsmouth Bowlerama as well off of Route 101 in New Hampshire. Lakeside Lanes, though, is the first right off the Massabesic traffic circle after taking exit 1. It's adjacent to the Massabesic Lake. 24-lane house, Lakeside Lanes is. Very busy house. Great house to bowl at, though. There's a 10 box for Chris Salmons, and that's 72 through 8. Lakeside Lanes opened on November 27th, 1959. Current owner Tim Lithke bought Lakeside Lanes in 1999. And there's Chris Salmons with an 8 drop, leaving the 4 and the 7. Closing in on the end of the first game here. For the spare, he plays the wood, he gets deflected. You can see it in his face, he just can't believe that action. That's Candlepin bowling for you. Sometimes the easy ones don't go, despite your best efforts. And he'll take a 9-box in the 9th for 81. 2 points, or 2 pins away from tying. Anything higher than that to take all 2 points. Each game is worth 2. The grand total is worth 4. So the grand total pinfall, think of it as worth 2 extra game wins out of 14 available points in a match. Here's Chris Salmons to the left of the head pin, and he takes down 6, 139. We have yet to find a mark in this game from either bowler. Let's see if Chris Salmons can pull it off here. And he'll miss the object. He'll take 2 of 4. So it looks like this first game will be markless for both bowlers, and Chris Salmons will take 2 points, though, as a consolation. He'll take an 89 first game, and Bryan Hebert will take an 83 first game. No marks to speak of, just 1 10-box for Bryan Hebert and 2 for Chris Salmons. So far, Chris Salmons in the lead by 2 points. Let's move on to Game 2 here on the ACST. So we'll begin once again with Bryan Hebert in just a moment or two. Bryan Hebert threw an 83 in the first game. Chris Salmons won by 6 with 89 in the first game. So it's 2 points for Chris Salmons so far. And Bryan Hebert will start off Game 2 on lane 4. Starting now. And he'll shave a few off to get things going. It's a bit of a washout situation. He'll chop the 6 on the second ball. 1, 3, 7, 9, 10. And he'll make that a 6-box as he signals to the scorekeeper. 6 through 1. Bryan Hebert, his longest streak of strings more than 100, has been 2 consecutive this season. He has 1 match where he's gone more than 7 points. He'll take 3 out here. His average points per away match this season, 2.8. Average points per home match, 6. This is an away match for Bryan Hebert today. He bowls out of Boutwell's Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire as his home house. He previously had his home house here at Lakeside in previous seasons. In his past 5 matches, he's thrown 8 strikes, 29 spares, and 43 tens. And he'll shave off the 5, leaving the 1, 7, 10 for a 7-box. And it looks like we might have to... Nope, it looks like the pin setter will it? Won't it? It won't. Piece of wood will have to be cleared out of the gutter on the right side. And there we go. Sounds like it'd be tough to clear the dead wood without having to respot. Bryan Hebert managed to figure that out. Here we go, Bryan Hebert for box 3 in the first quarter of the second game. He'll take 3 out again in the back right corner, 6, 9, 10 taken out. And he'll almost spare it up. He'll leave the 4. Nice elegant ball. Just not a lot of results. As Chris Salmons yells, "Sweep the leg!" Will Bryan Hebert sweep the leg? And he will for 23 through 3. Bryan Hebert on average goes 13.2 for 50 on the head pin and 6.2 splits per match. And he'll take the 10 pin out, and only the 10 pin. Bryan Hebert is the 14th highest Class E average at 89.3. And he's on the pocket, almost spares it up, leaves the 6. There's a piece of wood that is out of play, might be rolling back into play. We'll find out. I think it's good. Yeah, that looks good. Bryan Hebert's just Double checking, but Chris Salmons gave the thumbs up. And it didn't matter anyway, because Bryan Hebert avoided it and still got the 10. So that's 33 through 4. There is a line down there. We can't see it on the camera here, but if you go walking down the lane and you get to that point, there is a line that defines if a pin is in or out of bounds. And Bryan Hebert's on the 1-3 pocket. He takes 6 down. He's got the 4, 7, 8, and 10. 3 left, 1 right. Piece of wood in the center. I wouldn't play that piece of wood, though. Hebert goes for the triangle. And takes 1 off the triangle with the wood. 4, 7, 10 for a 10 box. 7 box guarantee. And Hebert will take 2 on the left and leave the 10 on the right for a 9 box. And that's 42 through 5. And that is the end of the half in the second game for Bryan Hebert. 42 after 5 boxes, 1 for 5 in the headpin, and that 1 headpin shot was a split. And now Chris Salmons is getting ready to fire here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Great to have you along as always. I'm Steve Kelly on the call in the virtual broadcast booth, recording after the fact. Here's Chris Salmons, barrels down and buries the pocket, but hits it a little bit full. He's got the 3, 4, 6. Salmons into the center gap where the first ball went. A double strike in another universe somewhere. Salmons will take 2 off the left and get a piece of debris coming over as the messenger on the 4. That's a 10 box, a pretty 10 box for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons has the second highest Class E average at 98.7 and the third highest Class E total strikes at 20, the fifth highest Class E high series at 536, the 10th highest Class E total spares at 67. And excuse the brief pause in the video. So again, this is a broadcast that's being recorded after the fact, and the recording was split into multiple files. I had my setup configured where it won't exactly switch to the other files, but there's a nice 10 box, by the way, for Chris Salmons. It doesn't elegantly switch files, so I had to click a button to move to the next one. So we didn't lose any frames. It was just a brief black screen. You get it. I'm over explaining it. That's 2 10 boxes for Chris Salmons. 20 through 2, perfect on the headpin this game until now. He'll take 3 out. Half Worcester plus the 5 taken out, 3 drop. Salmons to the right, shaves a few more off. 1, 2, and 9 left for a 10 box. Excuse me, the 1, the 4, and the 9, not the 1, the 2, and the 9. It'll be a 7 box or higher. He'll hit the headpin. He'll be an 8 box for Chris Salmons, who has the number 1 highest Class E average spare fill at 5.7, the 3rd highest Class E perfect box percentage at 40%, and the 5th highest Class E fewest average pins left standing at 64.8. Chris Salmons fires to the left of the headpin, and it's another 3 drop. Half Worcester plus the 5 on the left side. He recently faced Nick Charest in round 6, taking 12 points of the 525 series. He threw a 98, a 97, a 95, a 115, and a 120 with 2 strikes, 12 spares, and 7 tens. Second ball goes where the first ball went, sensing a bit of a theme here. He's at 3 or higher to complete the 3rd box. Just wants to get out of this with some dignity, and he will with a 7 box, leaving the 4, the 7, and the 9. Chris Salmons in previous years bowled out of Riverwalk lanes and Academy lanes as his home houses. This year, he comes in as a substitute bowler, bowling out of Lakeside lanes. And 6 go down for Chris Salmons. It's the 1, 3, 6, 10. Piece of wood. It looks like it hasn't gone into the gutter, and it's still meandering around on the plate. Bryan Hebert will go down to check it. Maybe in, maybe out. We'll find out. And it is in. All right. It is, Bryan's going to come back to assess the situation. You see that gesture? It was just barely barely in, but it was in. Salmons will go for the 4 horsemen. He'll take 3 of 4. Messenger comes for the head pin, and it just wraps around it, doesn't take it. And Salmons will finish off with a 10 box for 45 through 5. Bryan Hebert's at 42 through 5, a difference of 3. 125 for Bryan Hebert, 134 for Chris Salmons in the grand total pinfall landscape here at the ACST. Class E North. Bryan Hebert at Chris Salmons. Bryan Hebert continuing on now. Bryan Hebert, who averages 89 on the road, but he also averages effectively the same, just 0.9 more when he's at home. And really, to be honest, Bryan Hebert can call both houses home. Myself and Bryan have both out of Lakeside for many, many years, and Bryan Hebert many more years than myself. So while this year Bryan Hebert bolts out of Boutwell's Bowling Center as his home house, he is no stranger to Lakeside lanes whatsoever. And that will be an 8 box for Bryan Hebert in the 8th, bringing him to 50 through 8. And 133 in the total thus far. Bryan Hebert is 1 for 6 on the head pin with 1 split so far this game. And overall, he's 25% on the head pin. As we start thinking about the end of the second game, Bryan Hebert here in the third quarter takes 3 pins out. The 6, 9, 10. The follow-up takes the left 3 in the back corner, followed by a few sleepers courtesy of some spinning moving wood. That results in a leave of the 1-2 for an 8 box or greater. Let's see what happens here with Bryan Hebert. He'll nudge one down and leave the head pin for a 9 box. Bryan Hebert presently 4th in his division, 10th in the wild card. He fires on the 3-6 pocket, takes 3 out. He's got the 6-pack on the left side, and then the 10 pin. Hebert will go for the left cluster, leaving a 2x2 grid in the center along with the 10 pin. That's the 1, 2, 5, 8, 10 for those keeping score at home. And he'll chop 3 of 4 on the grid, leaving the 5 and the 10. That's an 8 box for 67 through 8. And Hebert will mix some down off of the 3-6 pocket again, but a better mix than last box. He leaves the 1-4-7. Good amount of wood. Decent setup. Collides with the object pin right where it should have gone, but it shoots straight back. He leaves the 4-7. And for the cleanup, he'll leave the 7 for a 9 box. 76 through 9 for Bryan Hebert. First game was 83. Bryan Hebert closing out the second game with this final first ball of the second game. Takes the 6 and the 10 out on the first ball. On the pocket, everything goes down but the 5. Another great shot. Some of these shots are exactly where the ball should go. We're just getting left with a pin or 2 on the messenger action. Hebert will clean that up for a nice 10 box. That brings him to 86 in the 10th. That's an 86 second game and a 2-game total of 169. 83 followed by 86. That's Bryan Hebert's story. As we pivot back to Chris Salmons for the 4th quarter of the second game here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Here's Chris Salmons now on lane 3. 7 go down. Is to the left of the head pin. Leaves the 1-3-7 on the first ball. And Salmons on the pocket, leaves the 7. Again, not a whole lot. That could have been done a bit much better about that. For Salmons, again, he's 110 and 58 for the season. Averages at home at Lakeside 97.8. He'll take a 9-box here to start his second half journey. 54 through 6. Chris Salmons in the back right corner again. Takes 3 out and leaves 7 standing. Center diamond in the 4 triangle. Salmons is looking to get a spare out of this, and he's on the pocket, and just like Bryan Hebert's shots, Chris Salmons just leaves an unexplainable number of pins on the plate despite hitting it pretty much where you should hit. He leaves the 5 and the 7 for a 10 box. He's got an 8 box coming up, and maybe higher is going to be a 9, leaving the 7 pin for a 9 box for 63 through 7, with 3 boxes to go in this second game in this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class E North action. It's another Chris Salmons versus Bryan Hebert match. We almost have enough of these to make a playlist at this point. In fact, might consider doing that. Keep an eye out on 3 ball spare for that. Chris Salmons drops 4. And Salmons will take only the 2. It wedges its way out of the 148 vicinity without the rest of the pins going down. That was interesting. Chris Salmons looking for an out. It ends up being a 148 leave for a 7 box for 70 through 8. The division leader, Chris Salmons, in Class E North Division 1 at the time of this match. His 13th match of the season. Coming in as a mid-season substitute bowler, and when that happens, you pick up someone else's record and you gotta roll with it. You bowl out the remaining season, and you take what you get, coming in late. That's a 6 drop and a split for Chris Salmons in the 9th. It appears to be the 2-7-5-10. I am looking at this at an angle, so do forgive me if that's wrong. Chris Salmons misses the opportunity shot for the spare. And Chris Salmons will nudge the object, not hard enough. He'll take 2 of 4. He'll leave the 7 and the 10 with the 7 wiggling, but it's not going to go down. It looks like it will be an 8 box in the 9th for 78 for Chris Salmons. He's currently at 167. Reasonable pinfall lead over Bryan Hebert with 1 box to go. And Chris Salmons squeeze out the points. He's 2 pins closer. As of that shot, it's a right side half Worcester. 3 and the 9 poked out. And he'll take 3 more out. 1, 5, 6, 7, 10 for Chris Salmons. That puts him at 83. He needs 3 more pins to be able to take this game in the 3rd frame. Chris Salmons is going to think long and hard about it, and he fires. Needs 3, takes 2. And guess what? That means he'll fall by 1 pin in this string to Bryan Hebert's 86. That puts Bryan Hebert at 169 2 games in with that 86, and he'll take 2 more points off this game. Chris Salmons with an 85. Not quite good enough for 2 points, but he came really dang close. So both bowlers relatively evenly matched. They both have 2 points apiece at the end of 2 games. So we're going to start game 3. Chris Salmons leads by a little bit in the total, 174 to Bryan Hebert's 169. Coming up next will be Bryan Hebert. To start out the 3rd game, he'll be on lane 4 here on the ACST at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Bryan Hebert so far, he's bowled 81 on lane 3, and 88 on lane 4, so the distribution is relatively even between the two lanes. And he'll chop out a few there on the first ball. And the attempt for the spare, just a little bit to the left of the pocket. He'll take out the 2 and the 8 pins. He's got 3 in the middle and 2 on the left. And he'll miss them all, and that will be an opener of a 5 box, I believe. 5 after 1 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert in his past 5 away matches, he's taken 14 points, averaging 2.8 points per match. Past 5 home matches, 24-point take-home, averaging 4.8 points in each match. He'll take the 6 and the 10 out on the first ball. Recently, Bryan Hebert faced Diane Hammett in round 9, taking 2 points with a 474 series with an 84, a 91, a 97, a 104, and a 98. In that match against Diane Hammett, he had 2 strikes, 5 spares, and 7 tens. And here is the result of the next box for Bryan Hebert. That is 14 through 2 with a 9 box. Bryan 311's Hebert, as I have in my notes for him, that's a reference to a story in which he bowled 3 spares with a 1 fill in a row at Lakeside Lanes on October 27th, 2024. That was a funny experience. He just couldn't stop sparing, but his first ball spare fill was just most unfortunate. 3 in a row. His all-time high single is 158 at the Putnam Street King of the Hill regular event. Bryan Hebert no spare here. He's got the 127 for a 10 box with an orange pin head pin. It'll be a 7 in the third for Bryan Hebert for 21 through 3. Bryan Hebert Jr., he once threw a 4-bagger, but it was in warm-ups. He was at Leda Lanes in the Wednesday Night Mixed League a while back, and it was very amusing. He couldn't believe he threw 4, and honestly, neither of us could either, but we were all like, oh boy, you wasted it. You threw it in warm-ups. And Bryan Hebert will miss the 5 and the 8 on the second ball in the 4th frame. And he'll leave the 5 and the 8 for an 8 box in the 4th for 29 through 4. Here's Bryan to start the 5th frame of the 3rd game to bring him to halftime, and he drops 9. Nice ball. It was on the head pin. Piece of deadwood rolling out of play. We'll see if it rolls into the right side gutter. Pins that do this tend to keep us in suspense because it looks like it's done rolling, but it's actually not. And sometimes it decides to turn around and go the other way. And this is one of those situations where it might very annoyingly stop halfway on the lane, halfway off, and that means you gotta go down and take it out, assuming it fully stops rolling. If it doesn't, you gotta wait, and then it gets even more tedious. It has stopped rolling. Chris Salmons has picked it up. And Bryan Hebert will have a little souvenir for the end of the box to throw it back into the abyss at the end of the lane. Back to the action. This is for a spare shot. And Hebert will miss the spare. Off to the right. Single pin spare was the 4-pin. Bit of a psychologically difficult shot. Bryan Hebert will miss it twice, almost in the same place, so you can't knock him for inconsistency. So that's a 9 in the 5th for Bryan Hebert. That puts him at 38 through 5. He's 2 for 5 in the head pin, and a halftime total of 207 with 4 points. Excuse me, 2 points. He has 4 points if he would win the 3rd game, but the game's in progress. Chris Salmons is 5 boxes behind. Here's Chris Salmons on the pocket, and what does he get for it? He gets a banana split, a 4, 6, 7, 10. Very symmetrical leave. 2 pieces of wood across the 2 halves on each side. Salmons starts at the left side, bulldozes the 4 and the 7. Now he's going to go for the 6 and the 10. Sometimes this is the best you can do. Just spend the next 2 balls just clearing the deck. And Chris Salmons does exactly that. And he pins it out for a 10. Chris Salmons in his past 5 away matches, he's taken 44 points, and that's an average of 8.8 points per match. And in his past 5 home matches, about 52 points, averaging 10.4 points per match at Lakeside Lanes. Chris Salmons on average goes 17.3 for 50 on the head pin, with 7.3 splits on average per match. He'll leave the 1 and the 3. And he'll leave the head pin. That's a 9 box. 19 through 2 for Chris Salmons. Here's Chris. Off to the right of the head pin. Takes 5 down. He's got the 1, 2, 4, 8, and 9 by the looks of it. And he's right on it, and he has a mark. You can tell he is shocked that he has found a mark today. Both bowlers struggling mightily. And in fact, we are almost halfway through the 3rd game, and that is actually the first mark either bowler has thrown. Otherwise, it was just a game of 10 boxes. Chris Salmons finally broke it, so for the first time today, here's a spare fill. And that's a 3 fill for Chris Salmons as he takes the 6, the 9, and the 10 out. That puts him at 32 through 3. And he's on the pocket for the spare shot. He leaves the 5 and the 7. Seems the spare bank is rather low in inventory today for either bowler. Chris Salmons will leave the 5 and the 7, and that's going to be an 8 box. That puts him at 40 through 4. Salmons pocket shot again. Will he get a decent leave out of it? Not quite. It's a 6-7 leave. Angled wood is not great looking. I even heard Bryan Hebert go in the background go, ugh. And it's my sentiment as well. Wood rolling to the right of the 6, and it might even roll into the, well, not into the channel, but not into a helpful place either. Chris Salmons is just going to have to take what he can get out of this. Red lines the wood in front of the 6, and would you believe it takes the 7, but not the 6? Yeah, that's the problem with angled wood. Especially if you just do as much as redline it, even if it's only at that slight of an angle. Salmons will leave the 6 for a 9 box, and that's 49 for Chris Salmons. 223 halftime total for Chris Salmons. Your halftime score update, 207 Bryan Hebert, 223 for Chris Salmons. They both have 2 points apiece at this point in the match. So we're relatively even aside from Chris Salmons' slight lead in the grand total pinfall, but it isn't a whole lot. Just 16. Here's Bryan to the left of the head pin. Takes 4 down. Couple on the left and 1 on the right. Cluster of pins in the center for Bryan Hebert. He wants to spare this up. He's on the head pin. Oh my goodness, it only the head pin and only the 6 pin go. The 3, 5, 8, and 9 somehow just were completely impervious to that. And Bryan's just looking to sweep this up and clean it up, and the 8 pin goes diagonal, but then stands back up to fight. That's going to be a 9 box for Bryan Hebert for 47 through 6. And we're just flipping the tape over. Stand by for a second or two, and we're back. Flipping the digital tape over. Bryan Hebert to the left of the head pin takes 7 down, 1-3-6. For a spare, ball bounces a little bit, but it's a successful spare for Bryan Hebert. Both bowlers finally cracking the drought of spares, or marks in general, both bowlers. 1 spare apiece, Bryan Hebert 57 and a bonus through 6 with that first spare. and the second spare of the match overall across both bowlers. Here's Bryan filling a spare, and let's hope it's good, and it will be a 5 fill, a Caleri on the left side, 1, 2, 4, 7, 9, putting him at 62 through 7. And he mows down the back sleeper pin of the Caleri, courtesy of the wood, missing the object pin. He's got the 1, 2, 4, 7 left. He'll take the 7, leaving the 1, 2, 4. That's a 7 box for 69 through 8 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert will nudge down 2 pins, the 7 and the 8. Here in the 9th box. And he'll take a 3rd pin out. He's got the center diamond and the 6 triangle, shooting for a 10 box here. And the clean out, he'll leave 5 pins standing. That's 74 in 9 for Bryan Hebert, 243 on the grand total pinfall so far, with 1 box to go before we complete Game 3 for Bryan Hebert. And Bryan Hebert's on the pocket, and 9 go down. It was almost a 4-10 split, but the 10 fell eventually, and it's a wiggling 4, single pin spare opportunity in the 10th for Bryan Hebert at the end of the 3rd game. It's away, and he just narrowly misses the 4 to the right. That could leave an opening for Chris Salmons, who has a 49.5. There'll be a 9 for Bryan, and that's an 83 in the 10th for 252. 3 games in for Bryan Hebert, 83, an 86, and another 83. No strikes, 1 spare, 4 10s for Bryan Hebert, 7 headpin shots so far, 2 splits, 4.13 first ball average for Bryan Hebert. Chris Salmons returns to the approaches in just a moment here. That was a fast moment. Here's Chris Salmons. And he nudges a few in the middle and right side. The middle row and the back row. He takes a couple pins down, that's what I'm trying to tell you. And he takes a few more pins down on the second ball. He leaves the 1, 2, 3, and 8. And cleans it up for a nice 10 box. That puts him at 59 through 6. Bryan Hebert is at 47 through 6. We have officially crossed over to the second half of the match for Chris Salmons, who has 2 points so far. Looking for more. Drops 8, leaves the 5-10. And he spares the 5-10. That's a second spare of the match for Chris Salmons, and that was a nice shot. Assisted with wood to guide the 5 into the 10. Decisive hit. No waiting. It's 69 and a bonus for Chris Salmons here at the end of the 7th. Next ball completes the spare fill. And it will be 5, 2x2 grid in the 9, all in the center. 74 through 7 for Chris Salmons, who's gone 3 for 7 on the headpin with 3 splits. Next ball takes the sleeper. He's got the 2x2 grid, the 1, 2, 5, and the 8. And he'll take another out. Leaves the 1, 5, 8. That's a 7 box for 81 through 8 for Chris Salmons. Compare that to 69 through 8 for Bryan Hebert. Chris Salmons once again reclaimed the grand total pinfall, and he's 2 boxes behind. He's on the head pin. He takes 5 out. 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 for Chris Salmons. And he'll take 3 on the right and leave 2 on the left. And Salmons will leave the 2 and the 4 for an 8 box in the 8th for 89. And that's more than Bryan Hebert's 83 third game, so that's another 2 points for Chris Salmons. It's now 4 points for Chris Salmons, 2 points Bryan Hebert, not factoring in the grand total pinfall yet. Grand total pinfall-wise, Salmons is ahead with 263 over Bryan Hebert's 252 and counting as he collides with the head pin and takes 6 down, 2, 4, 7, 8 for Chris Salmons. This is the last spare shot of the third game. Salmons fires upon it, takes 3 of 4. The 8 pin somehow doesn't go. Just the way the pins mixed and the way the ball collided. For the 10 box for Chris Salmons, and he'll make it a 9. That'll be 98 for Chris Salmons and 272 for grand total for Chris Salmons. So that's 4 points for Chris Salmons, 2 for Bryan Hebert. Chris Salmons wins games 1 and 3, while Bryan Hebert takes game 2. It's a difference of 20 in the total. Bryan Hebert 252, Chris Salmons 272. As we move on to game 4 or 5 in this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match, Class E North, Bryan Hebert versus Chris Salmons. A match recorded in the past and narrated in the future. I'm Steve Kelly in the virtual broadcast booth. Great to have you along. Bryan Hebert begins game 4. And here we go. He'll take 6 pins off the right side. That's a 6-pack left side for Bryan Hebert. And he's on the head pin on the outside, exactly where you want to put that ball. The 5 pin is the only pin that doesn't go down from that 6-pack shot, 5 of 6 cans. Hebert pins it out for 10 through 1 to start the 4th. Here's Bryan, and he finds the pocket, and the pins just mix weirdly. He's got the 5 and the 7. And I saw the way the pins mixed there. Normally, that's almost always a guaranteed strike because often you can kick the head pin to spin like a helicopter blade style into the 5 and the 7 or the 5 and the 8, but it just oddly didn't happen there. The pins just kind of scattered. So Bryan hit it right, I would say. It's just, I don't know. Very odd. Bryan Hebert takes a 9 for 19 through 2. First ball of the third box. 4 go down. 1, 2, 4, 8, 6, 10. And Bryan Hebert will shave a couple off and leave the 1, 2, 4. He collided with the 6 and the 10. Drifted off to the right of the intended target. But he'll clean up for a nice 10 box though. 10, 9, 10. That's 29 through 3 for Bryan Hebert with a 281 grand total so far. And to start the 4th box, he'll take the 7 out, and only the 7. Looking for more. Well, you can't take the 7 pin twice, unfortunately. And he'll leave the 3 and the 6. That's an 8 box for 37 through 4 for Bryan. And here we go. Bryan on the head pin. Split 6, 3, 4, 6, 10. Will he take the 3 on the right? He will, but he'll leave the 4 pin. Just had to collide with the 3-6 pocket, kind of maybe like a centimeter to the right to go to the 4. That'll be a 10 for Bryan Hebert, 47 through 5. 10, 9, 10, 8, 10 for Bryan. That results in 299 and a 47.5 for Bryan as we go on to Chris Salmons, who is ready and raring to go on lane 4 here at the ACST at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. Class E North, Chris Salmons versus Bryan Hebert. Here we go. Chris Salmons to start the first half of the 4th game. He splits 8, 5, and the 10. A lot of lumber around the 5. Chris Salmons on the 5-10 for the spare, and he's got the spare, the split spare. Look at that happy face. Chris Salmons. Excuse me, that was a... No, I believe it was a spare, actually, and I'll explain that in a moment. Chris Salmons for the fill. He'll take 5 out. 1, 3, 4, 7, 8 for Chris Salmons. I think there's a visual bug in the scoreboard, so I scored this match before I narrated it, and I believe I correct this in just a few seconds, so bear with me on the score in just a moment. So he has the 5 fill on the spare. 3, 4, 7 for Chris Salmons. Up for the 3rd ball. And Salmons is just trying to get out of this box. He'll take an 8. That should be 23 through 2 for Chris Salmons. Again, I think I forget exactly when I realized that the score was wrong, but that will be updating in just a moment on your screen. There we go. 23 through 2 for Chris Salmons. Confirmed. And Chris Salmons for the strike, and there's a strike. Now we got something started here. That's a strike for Chris Salmons. That's 33 and a bonus through 3. So 2 boxes to go. Chris Salmons has found a hot spot of marks here. Starting out with a spare and a 5 fill, and he's got a strike in the 3rd. 2 balls to fill the strike. Salmons will just almost find the pocket. He'll take 3 out so far. Half Worcester plus the 5 on the left side. 3 fill in the strike. As it stands, next ball completes it. And he'll collide with the 1-3 pocket, and he'll only take a few more pins out. That's a hard-fought 5 fill for Chris Salmons. He's got 3 on the right, 2 on the left, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 38 through 3. And what'll it be? He'll take 2 on the right. He'll take the 6 and the 9, leaving the 4, 7, 10 for a 7 box in the 4th for 45 through 4 for Chris. He's got a heck of a half. Easily the best half thrown today by any bowler. The most exciting half of the match so far Chris Salmons is working on. And he'll continue. He'll take 3 out on the right side. 6-pack left in the 10. And Chris Salmons will chop the middle. Will he get the 4 to fall into the 2? He will. Or the 7 to fall into the 4, excuse me. The 4 won't fall into the 2. He's left with the 2 and the 10. And Salmons will kick the wood to kick the 2. He'll leave the 10. That's a 54 half for Chris Salmons. What a performance there. 2 marks, 2 for 5 in the head pin, 1 split. 4.5 games in, Chris Salmons 326, Bryan Hebert 299. And let's continue to quarter 3 of the 4th game here on the ACST in Manchester, New Hampshire at Lakeside Lanes. Bryan Hebert coming up next. Bryan Hebert's on lane 3, and let's go. Takes 6 down, 1, 2, 6, 10. Is on the head pin, just narrowly to the right of the 1. Kicks to the sidewall, rests in front of the 2. And he'll take the 2 out. That's an 8 box for Bryan Hebert. That puts him at 55 through 6. And he'll take the 6 and the 10 out of the first ball of the next frame. Bryan will leave the 1 and the 8 on the spare shot. Again, missing the object, but overcorrecting to the left a little bit. He was close to the target, just missed it a little bit. That's Candlepin for you. And Bryan will make it a 9 box. That's 64 through 7. Here's Bryan Hebert to the right of the head pin. Takes 5 down. Caliri left side, named after Bob Caliri, C-A-L-I-R-I, of Lexington, Massachusetts. And Bryan will take 4 of 5 pins of the Caliri, leaving the 4 pin standing. And it's a 9 box in the 8th, 73 through 8 for Bryan Hebert. Noteworthy about this game for Bryan is his lowest box has been 8. Everything else has been 9s and 10s. Doing well in the pinning department, just not a lot of luck in terms of marks and then capitalizing on said marks. And Bryan will take the 10 out there. It's largely something about the first ball that's just a little bit off in particular. Second ball, better than the first, but he's left to the left side Caliri again for a 5 box or higher. To clean this up, that will be a 6 for Bryan Hebert in the 9th. 79 and 9. Bryan on the pocket. Takes all but the 5 pin down, the king pin. It's a 9 drop on the first ball with a head pin shot. And he'll miss the 5 to the left. Just a little bit off. And it's a 10 for Bryan Hebert. And where does that leave us? That brings Bryan Hebert to his average of 89 in the 4th. His best game so far, a 4-game total of 341 for Bryan Hebert. 9 headpin shots, 3 splits so far. Chris Salmons with his best half yet. Comes back to lane 3, and let's see what happens from here on out. This match was played on March 21st, 2026. In case anybody was wondering. Chris Salmons takes 2 out on the first ball. Next ball on the 1-3 pocket. Only shaves off a few more off the top layer. Leaves 5 on the left. 2 diamond in the 7. And Chris Salmons will take a 5 in the 6th. That puts him at 59 through 6. He's only down by 10 in the grand total pinfall, and he has 4 boxes to reclaim that total and keep going forward. So the grand total is close, but Chris Salmons is still in control, and that will certainly help. 8 go down, 9 go down, the 6 pin wiggles, and it looks like a setup for a spare. Salmons for the 6. Oh, he hits the wood just too much to the left. Looking to clean this up, Chris Salmons will leave it for a 9. That puts him at 68 through 7. He's gone 3 for 7 on the head pin this game with 1 split. He's averaging 5.18 on the first ball. Here's Salmons. Goes to the right of the head pin. Starts on the 6-10 pocket, but a piece of wood helicopters the back row down. 6 pins fall. 1, 2, 3, 4. All in the center for Chris Salmons. For a spare opportunity. And he fires upon it, and he misses the object, but he gets it anyway. You can tell in his facial expression and his body language, he was like, oh boy, I stole it, but he steals a spare. His third of the game. That's 78 and a bonus through 8 for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons has found his stride in the 4th game. And to continue that, he'll miss the head pin, but he'll throw it a little bit hard, and that seemed to work for him. He got some sidewall bounces. He's got 6 on the fill for 84 through 8. He's got the 1, 7, 10, 2. And he'll go into the void where the 4 pin once stood. And what will the result be of this 9th box? It's going to be an 8 for 92 for Chris Salmons. He'll take 2 more points, needless to say. Bryan Hebert's only at 79 through 9, and Chris Salmons is already at 92. Chris Salmons just padding out his total in the grand total pinfall right now as we switch cassette tapes. Here we go. That should only happen maybe once more or twice more. I forget how many more times it happens before the end of the match, but just bear with me on that. Again, camcorder footage. And Chris Salmons will drop 9. He'll leave the 6. And for the spare on the 6, oh, it goes into the channel. But it stands the 6 up. So he didn't lose the pin or the box. He can shoot for a 10 on the 6 for the 3rd ball. And look, he played it clean. That's a 10 box for Chris Salmons and a 102 game 4. 374 4-game total for Chris Salmons. That's another 2 points. That brings him to a total of 6 so far for Chris Salmons. Bryan Hebert 341 with 2 points. And it's a lead of 33 in Chris Salmons' favor in the grand total pinfall going into the 5th and final game of this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match in Class E North, another installment of Bryan Hebert versus Chris Salmons. This is episode 4 of that saga. And we continue onward to finish episode 4 here in the 5th and final game. Here at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire, Bryan Hebert returns to lane 4 to start things off. So the 5th and final game is technically your final chance to score additional 4 points off of grand total pinfall, as well as the extra 2 points, you know, for the game itself. So I like to think of Game 5 as a 6-point game, especially if the grand total is relatively close. And it's only 30-something between Hebert and Salmons. A couple of marks gets you right back in it. Bryan Hebert gets no mark here. But he'll get a nice 10 box at the very least. That's 10 through 1 for Bryan Hebert. Bryan Hebert has a 30% perfect box percentage on average this season. Currently at 24%, so a little under par. This is the headpin to the right on the first ball. Second ball is closer, but not quite on the headpin still. He leaves the 1, 2, 4, 7. Six box or higher on the headpin. 2, 4, 7 standing. That's a 7 box in the second, for Bryan Hebert. 17 through 2. And here's Bryan to the left of the headpin. Takes 5 down. That's a Caleri. 1, 8, 3, 6, 10. Takes the 6 and the 10 out. Leaves the 1, the 3, and the 8. What'll it be? It'll be an 8 box in the third for Bryan Hebert. That's 25 through 3. Bryan's on the pocket. 4-7-10. And that's a nice spare by Bryan Hebert. That might be the best spare I've seen today. Oh my goodness, he used the wood to kick. He started towards the 7, kicked the wood in between the 4 and the 7, and it slid right into the 10. That's a difficult shot to convert, especially at the angle that he hit it at. So that's a spare for Bryan Hebert, 35, and a bonus through 4. And he's on the 1-3 pocket, filling the spare, and that's going to be a good fill. It's going to be an 8 fill. That puts him at 48 through 4, supercharging this game a little bit for him. 5 and the 8. And it's a double spare for Bryan Hebert. Throw that slash up on the board. 2 in a row. 53 and a bonus for Bryan Hebert in the 5th. That's his best half of the match so far. 53 and a bonus. 1 for 5 in the headpin, 1 split. 4.36 first ball average. 4 splits overall today. Chris Salmons looking to respond. So both bowlers have had at least one really super-powered first half. Chris Salmons had it last game. Bryan Hebert has it this game. Here's Salmons looking to figure it out. He'll start off with 3, 6, 9, 10 taken out. And the second ball, he's a little bit to the left of the head pin, overcorrects a little bit. He leaves the 1-3-7. And to finish it off, it'll be a 7 box. To start off the 5th game for Chris Salmons, 1 box in. Chris Salmons came into this 5th game with 6 points. Bryan Hebert came into this 5th game with 2 points. And Chris Salmons was 30 and some change ahead of Bryan Hebert in the grand total pinfall. As he drops 7 here, 1-2-4. For the spare on the 1-2-4, he misses the 1. Just narrowly. Very narrowly. To complete this box, he'll miss the head pin for a 9. 16 through 2 for Chris Salmons. Chris Salmons, as a refresher, he averages 98.7. But on the road, he averages 100. This is a home game for Chris Salmons today. Drops 6 here to split. 2-5-8-10. Kicks the wood and nothing goes. I'd play the outside of the 2-pin on the left side. And Chris Salmons pretty much does that, maybe a little bit more full than that, but it goes for a 10 box. What could have been a spare. Really well done shot by Chris Salmons. 26 through 3. Chris Salmons leading his division. 3rd place overall in the class seedings. And he'll find the pocket on the 1-3 and get rewarded with a 6 drop. It's an inverted check mark on the left side, 2-4-5-7. And Salmons misses the check mark. No spare. This will be for a 10 box. 6 box minimum. And he'll take that check mark. Another what could have been. 2 what could have beens in a row. That's 2 10 boxes for Chris Salmons for 36 through 4. 7, 9, 10, 10 is his current game. Chris Salmons has gone 36% on the headpin today with 9 splits. And Salmons will take the 6 and the 10 out on the right side. His final spare shot of the first half of any game today won't result in a spare. He's got the 3-4-7. Chris Salmons has 3 matches this season at or over 500 in grand total pinfall at the time of this recording. That's a 9 box for Chris Salmons, and he'll take a 45 half down to Bryan Hebert's 53 and a bonus half. It's 394 and counting for Bryan Hebert with a pending fill. And Chris Salmons is currently at 419, so it's still relatively even in the grand total pinfall. Let's see if Bryan Hebert can squeak out a surprise victory here in the 5th. And he goes to fill that spare to complete the first half with 5 for 58 through 5. And this will be for the spare shot on the 5 fill. Misses it by a little bit, but takes 2 more out. So we won't have a hat trick spare. It'll be a 7 box in the 6 for 65 for Bryan Hebert. That pulls him up to 406. Just down by 13 now. See, those mark fills can really pull you out of a rut, especially in the grand total pinfall. So if you're down by a lot, just get some marks and get some fills. And try not to think too much about it. Bryan Hebert will drop 3. 4, 7, 8 taken out. And the follow-up chops the 3 and the 9. And to leave the 5 and the 10 on the 3rd ball. That's 73 through 7 for Bryan Hebert. 414 in the grand total pinfall so far today. 3 boxes to go before his day is complete. And he'll take 3 out, 6-pack left side, and the 10. And Hebert will take 2 more out. 2x2 grid in the center, and then the 10. That's the 1, 2, 5, 8, 10. And he'll leave 3 pins standing, 1, 8, 10 for a 7 box. That's 80 through 8 for Bryan Hebert. 2 boxes to go. Bryan takes 4 out, 1, 7, 10, 2, 6, 8. Pretty if it goes. He'll take a few more out. He'll leave the 1, 6, 8, 10. And it becomes an 8 in the 9th for 88 through 9 for Bryan Hebert. 1 box remaining. Last chance for a strike for Bryan today, and he'll just miss the headpin to the left. He'll take 4 out. 1, 7, 10, 3, 6, 8. He'll take the 1 and the 3, and only the 1 and the 3. 6, 7, 8, 10. 6 box or higher. And it ends up being an 8, leaving the 7 and the 8. That's a 96 game 5 for Bryan Hebert, and a 5 game total of 437 through an 83, 86, 83, 89, and 96 today. 4.26 first ball average will assess the point distribution at the end of this match once Chris Salmons finishes it off, our home bowler today. You're watching the ACST on Class E North. Bryan Hebert at Chris Salmons at Lakeside Lanes in Manchester, New Hampshire. I've been Steve Kelly in the virtual broadcast booth today. And it's been great to have you. Here's Chris Salmons to start out his final 6th box of the day. He'll drop 9 on the head pin. He'll leave the 10. And Salmons misses that single pin by a little bit. Salmons doesn't have a lot of ground left to recover in the grand total pinfall, so missing those marks isn't super crucial, but it will be nice to at least try to get to 96 or higher. With that 10 box, he's at 55 through 6. So he does need a mark to take the 2 points in the 5th game, doesn't need a mark to hold on to the total pinfall as long as his base box values are high enough. He'll drop 2 here. Just the 4 and the 7. Second ball gets closer to the head pin by an inch or two to the right. He leaves the 1 and the 3. For the 10 box, he'll again miss it to the left. He'll leave the 1 and the 3 for an 8 box in the 7th. Salmons fires, and he's got 8 down, leaving the 1 and the 2. Missed the head pin, but got a good mix out of it. He's just got the 1 and the 2 for a spare shot opportunity here. For Salmons at 63 through 7, going for a spare. He only gets the 2 and leaves the orange pin, head pin. The orange pin pool at Lakeside Lanes is a cool little pool where if you put $1 into the pool at the league you're in, if you get a mark off setup where the rack has spotted the head pin as the orange pin, you get entered into a raffle. And if you get something like a double strike, you can get compounding entries into that raffle as well. So Salmons will take a 10 box for 73 through 8. He's got 2 boxes to go here in this match, and he'll drop an ugly 6 split, a 5, 6, 7, 9 leave. That is gnarly. It's an inverted triangle. Yeah, there's not a lot of hope of sparing this unless you can make it really pretty. Salmons will take 2 off the middle and leave the 6 and the 7. And Bryan will make it an 8 box for 81 through 9. And he's in the danger zone for the 2 points off the 5th game, but he has reclaimed the grand total pinfall, so he's got a guaranteed +4. Can he get an additional +2 here? Let's find out. He has 6 points going into this 5th game. He has 10 with the total pinfall. And he can't mark. He's not going to have a happy time marking this. He drops 6 on the head pin as he goes, what is this? Nightmare Before Christmas style. 5, 6, 9, 10 for Chris Salmons for a spare shot opportunity. And yep, he takes 2. And that won't be a mark, so Bryan Hebert will hold on to the 5th game with 2 points. So he'll go 4 points today. Chris Salmons will go 10 points today. But we'll talk about all that in just a moment here. Chris Salmons will make it a 10 box. That's a 91 5th game and a 5 game total of 465 for Chris Salmons. So that's ball game. Chris Salmons takes 10 points. Bryan Hebert takes 4. Chris Salmons will move to 120 and 62. Bryan Hebert will move to 42 and 98. Both bowlers having mighty struggles today in terms of marks, in terms of pins not falling, and all kinds of struggles, but that's the ACST. It was fairly distributed. So here's your final totals. It's 437 Bryan Hebert, 465 Chris Salmons. 3 spares for Hebert, 4 for Salmons, 9 10s for Hebert, 13 for Salmons, 4.26 first ball average for Hebert, 5.44 first ball average for Chris Salmons. So the rest of the information here is on your screen for you to digest if you want to check it out. Feel free to pause the video if it's going too fast for you. So here's some graphs as well if you want to analyze all of that. Anyways, it's been great talking to you today from the virtual broadcast booth, a little bit different from our normal setup. I've been Steve Kelly with 3 Ball Spare, and I hope to see you at the next Atlanta Candlepin Singles Tour. Check out the info on your screen if you feel like subscribing, and I'd really appreciate it. Anyways, from everyone in this ACST match, for Chris Salmons and Bryan Hebert, I've been Steve Kelly, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or whatever it is. Have a great one, everybody.